Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Loera is a Mexican drug lord who is in charge of the Sinaloa cartel, and is considered to be the most powerful and notorious drug lord in the world today. Known as El Chapo, Joaquin's cartel primarily concerns themselves with the trade of cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and ecstasy, which are largely shipped to the United States for sale. He has been estimated to be worth some $1 billion, and is known for his various prison escapes. El Chapo has been arrested and locked up a few times, but has escaped each time, most recently in July of this year. He tunneled out of a maximum security prison in Mexico, and is still at large today. Next up is Griselda Blanco, also known as the Black Widow or the Cocaine Godmother, with an estimated net worth of $2 billion. Griselda was a member of the notorious Medellin cartel, and was involved with the cartel during their most powerful years. During the 1970s and the 1980s, Griselda primarily worked in New York and Miami, helping with the cocaine shipments that ended up in the United States. It is estimated that her operations in the United States at their height brought in some $80 million in revenue each month. However, Griselda became increasingly violent and paranoid over the years, like many drug lords, and was eventually arrested, yet the case fell apart. She then fled to Colombia, where she laid low, before she was eventually killed in a drive-by assassination in Medellin, Colombia in 2012. Carlos Lehder is a Colombian drug lord who is known as one of the original co-founders of the Medellin cartel. Carlos worked with the cartel originally as a leader of a militarized guerrilla army that fought against the various other groups in Colombia that sought to fight and end the cartels. Additionally, during the 1970s he purchased and operated an island in the Bahamas that acted as a waypoint for drug shipments that were headed from Colombia to the United States. He started to force the local population of the island, and for a short time, it was essentially a lawless land that was run by Lehder and his guerrilla forces. Eventually his cartel began to turn on him due to his increasingly militarized and radical behavior, which then led to his capture and arrest by the United States. He is currently held in a maximum security prison in the United States. Brothers Gilberto and Miguel Orihuela were two of the co-founders and leaders of the Cali cartel, a drug cartel from Colombia and one of the major rivals of the Medellin cartel. Like the Medellin cartel, the Cali cartel rose to power during the 1970s. Initially they primarily shipped cannabis into the United States, but soon turned over to cocaine. Whilst the Medellin cartel was waging war against the Colombian government, the Cali cartel was less violent and focused on making money. During their height, it is believed that Gilberto and Miguel earned a combined net worth of $3 billion. Eventually both were captured, extradited to the United States, and are currently serving 30-year prison sentences in maximum security prisons. Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha was a drug lord from Colombia and one of the chief leaders of the Medellin cartel, working alongside his friends and fellow associates Pablo Escobar, the Ochoa brothers, and Carlos Lehder. Rodriguez was born into poverty and eventually became a hitman during his youth. He eventually moved to Medellin, where he would then team up with others to form the Medellin cartel. Rodriguez assisted in setting up various trafficking routes throughout South and Latin America, in addition to constructing the various labs in the jungles where they actually made the cocaine. As their operations grew, Rodriguez began to diversify himself more, owning ranches and gem mines. When the Colombian government began to fight the Medellin cartel more, Rodriguez was one of the chief individuals that would organize kidnappings and bombings against the police, VIPs, judges, and various members of the government. Jose would continue to resist arrest and fight the government before he was killed in a police raid in 1989. Kun Sa was a Shan military leader and drug lord who is also known as the Opium King. Kun Sa grew to prominence during the 1960s when he fled into Burma during the end of the Chinese Civil War. He began to organize a small militia group of fighters which would eventually grow into an army that fought for the Shan state. Eventually he got involved with the opium and eventually the heroin trade, as he oversaw the production and transportation of these drugs within Southeast Asia. Kun Sa was eventually indicted by the United States for his drug operation, and then surrendered to the Burmese government in hopes that he would not be extradited to the US. He was then never really locked up and lived out the remainder of his life in Rangoon. Jorge, Juan David, and Fabio Ochoa were three brothers who were also co-founders and members of the Medellin cartel. The Ochoa brothers were already producing and trafficking cocaine before the Medellin cartel was formed, and it made sense for them to join forces with Escobar, Rodriguez, and others. During the height of their operations, they were estimated to have a combined net worth of some $6 billion. As their drug empire began to fall, Jorge and Juan David would eventually surrender to the Colombian government and Fabio was extradited to the United States. Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar is an Indian crime and drug lord who leads the notorious D Company syndicate in India. Dawood's organization oversees everything from assassinations to drug trafficking. He is believed to be responsible for the 1993 Mumbai bombings and he known to be a close associate with Al-Qaeda and even Osama bin Laden when he was alive. It is estimated that Dawood is worth around $6.7 billion and he is currently one of the most wanted criminals. His current whereabouts are unknown, but it is believed he may be residing in Pakistan or the United Arab Emirates. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was a Mexican drug lord who overtook the Juarez cartel after he personally assassinated the former leader, Rafael Aguilar Guajardo. Amado was known as the Lord of the Skies as he had 27 Boeing 727 jets that flew regularly into the United States carrying cocaine. It is estimated that he was worth $25 billion at one point, making him one of the richest drug lords ever. As various governments began to try and catch Amado, he opted to get plastic surgery on his face to change his appearance. During the operation he died. However, there are a few conspiracy theories out there that suggest that he is still alive. Pablo Escobar is easily the most notorious and richest drug lord that ever lived. He was the focal member and founder of the Medellin cartel, and was one of the wealthiest criminals in history. During the height of the Medellin cartel and his empire, it was estimated that Pablo supplied 80% of the cocaine sold in the United States and the cartel was bringing in over $60 million every day. When he was alive, he was one of the richest individuals in the entire world. He fought extremely hard and violently against the Colombian government during the 1970s, 1980s, and the 1990s, and essentially was waging a war. Escobar was eventually killed during a raid in 1993, leaving behind a notorious legacy.